Welcome everyone to episode 58 of What's That Sound podcast. My name's Stu Watts, and today I talked with Myles Mumford, who is a producer, engineer, composer, as well as the co-owner of Rolling Stock Recording Rooms in Collingwood. In this episode, we talked about the concept and creation of Rolling Stock Recording Rooms, as well as the importance of building a community and the difficulties of being a creative freelancer and how important it is to find the joy and purpose in what you do. For all that and heaps more, stay tuned. If you would like to support the podcast, you can spread the word about us in a conversation or on your social media. That's the best way to get the word out about the podcast. You can do us a favor by rating us highly, 5 stars, if you think that that's appropriate, on Apple Podcasts as well as Spotify podcasts. That will help bump us up in the algorithm. Make sure you are following or subscribed on your favorite platform to stay in touch. Staying up to date on those platforms will make sure that you get notified about the latest episodes and news. And you can also buy some merch. So we have t-shirts available online, and they are available for purchase. I will have links to everything in the show notes, so you at any time can click on the links to get in touch or buy merch or any of that stuff. There's also going to be links to all of my own work and Myles' work and websites and whatnot. So all easily accessible via the show notes. With all that aside, let's get into it. Episode 58 of What's That Sound podcast with my guest, Myles Mumford. You're listening to What's That Sound with your host, Stu Watts. Welcome, everyone. I am here today with Myles Mumford. Myles, thanks for trekking out to my studio.
Oh, my pleasure.
And thanks for hanging out today. I'm really, really excited.
Yeah.
I think we're going to get into some pretty interesting stuff today. But for anyone that doesn't know who you are and what you do, give us a little bit of insight into your day-to-day life in the music industry.
Okay, well, I run a recording studio. Rolling Stock Recording Rooms is my place. Well, it's not just mine. I have 2 partners in that, Tom Strode and Svi Belling. But I'm there 5-6 days a week.
Yep.
And we make records.
Awesome.
That's basically it. My entire career has been, I went to university, studied music at university. And from then on, the only work I've ever done is somehow related to the music industry.
Yep.
So whether that's, pushing boxes around backstage or on the stage or in the control room.
Yep.
It's all been somehow music related.
Yeah, cool. Well, take us back to when you were a youngster. Tell us about music and how that came into your life and how it impacted your life.
Yeah, so my very first memories would be music related, or it certainly would all be tied in there. My dad is a musician. He was a music teacher. He still is a music teacher. And if anything, my dad would say that he is a music educator over being a musician, even though he's a fine musician. And so we went to gigs, in utero onwards, essentially. And when I probably was 6, maybe, we started getting a variety of music lessons. There's a famous story in my family about a major bust up about Dad encouraging might not have been the right word, practice on the piano.
Yeah.
I didn't play piano after that. But when I was about 8 or 9, I think, my dad said, sat my older brother and I down and said, didn't matter what instrument we were going to play, but we were going to play an instrument as long as we were living at home.
Yeah.
And so my brother, he started on trumpet and slowly migrated to tuba, and I started on trombone and went to university on trombone.
Cool. Tell us about that. Well, I guess that's skipping a little bit ahead, maybe a little bit of the in-between. Maybe.
Well, we just, that was just it. We just played music. So there wasn't good music programs in the schools that I went to. Actually, there were some pretty appalling ones.
Yeah.
But we did loads of extracurricular music. Every day was half an hour of practice before school, half an hour of practice when we got home.
What music was floating around your house, and what did you end up resonating with as a young adult?
Yeah, so I mean that's an interesting thing because we had music all the time, but very little of it was contemporary. My dad, I mean I joke about this, but it's kind of true. My dad doesn't listen to music past 1750.
Yeah.
And he would laugh about that and say, well, that's not true, but that is essentially true.
99% of the time.
Yeah. Despite my dad being a fine jazz trombonist, he's played with like some really, significant jazz musicians, Australian and international jazz musicians. And yeah, so my mum, who's not a musician, but is a music lover and you'd say she's an amateur musician. She's played in various ensembles,
cool.
But never career driven or professional or anything like that. She loves James Taylor. And so we had this odd collection of classical music and James Taylor, basically.
Yeah, right.
I remember the first CD we bought was before we even had a CD player, was James Taylor's Never Die Young album.
Cool.
I'm a massive fan of James Taylor subsequently. But yeah, it was an odd one in terms of the music that was in the household. But in terms of what we would play, Dad ran wind orchestras, wind bands, so a lot of that. Brass ensembles, because he's a brass player. My brother and I both played brass instruments, so a variety of those. Also sang in choirs. I've got some great memories of growing up in a, I guess you'd call it a high Anglican church, which had a fantastic pipe organ, a great choral director, and we just did wonderful repertoire. So apart from doing the usual kind of hymns, etc., every now and then the music director would go, oh, well, we're going to do St. Matthew's Passion by Bach this year for Christmas.
Cool.
Or that one, of course, would be for Easter. But and so we did that kind of stuff.
Yeah, sweet. And then, you studied performance, on brass and memories of that.
I'm not really certain when I made the decision to do music. It just kind of happened. Whereas my brother didn't make that decision. He chose to do other things. But I got into composition in, I don't know, my mid-teens maybe. And so when I went to university, I did everything that I could do. It was a small university. So I did all of the classes. So I did all the history classes, all the theory classes. I did all the performance-related stuff. But because I knew the various people, the various staff, like it was the university that my dad taught at, so most of the staff were people I knew from a young age. I did all of their classes as well. So I did all the composition classes. I did conducting. My dad encouraged me to learn other instruments. So I did up to probably a grade 1 standard. I didn't actually do AMEB stuff, but that kind of thing on clarinet, on euphonium, which is kind of very similar to trombone. Also on strings, on percussion, so that I would have a decent but very basic understanding of these instruments and how to produce sound with them. Yeah,
totally. I mean, it's that's a broad range of various instruments and sounds and things like that, and understanding of music itself and where it came from and stuff like.
Yeah, it's huge. Like it's weird too how often that stuff pops up. In my career. It's been very varied. So I don't do, like I just did a rock album. Can't remember the last time I made a rock album. But, I've also done string quartet albums, the most esoteric, avant-garde, experimental stuff, free jazz, orchestral, choir. And the appreciation of that stems from a very young age. Even though I said my dad would, mostly listen to, Gabrieli or Heinrich Schütz, his appreciation of music is very expansive, especially if it's a live performance. Like he's not going to buy a rock album. He's just not going to do that. But if you took him to a rock gig, he'd enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I'm very much the same in that.
Yeah, I think that having that appreciation for music itself is like being open-minded. I mean, you can't help it when you're a teen somewhat, to close things off that you aren't interested in or whatever, but to allow yourself to have an appreciation for music in general, it just allows you to kind of experience things a little bit freer and not be so blocked into. And I mean, that can help as well. It can help to narrow yourself and be really laser focused on things. But I think more just the appreciation of music will allow you to experience things in a less rigid way.
Oh, absolutely. So like the genres don't interest me at all. I'm happy to do a deep dive on a genre for a project. So like this rock album I was making is like they wanted to sound like AC/DC, Airborne, Southern River Band. You go, okay, great. Well, I can go and listen to those records. I can think about what it is that's making those. I can look up some of the techniques, even talk to some of the people that worked on those. Yeah. And you go, great. Like the technical side of making those records is actually the least challenging part of making those records, of any records, I think. Well, maybe not any record, but most records, the technical side is not the challenging part. The technical side is something that, sure, you should experience and you should play with and you should, try different things out. But, if the sound hitting the microphone is great, it's not that hard after that point. There's challenges. But
it's a hard thing to appreciate when you only get that perspective when you've been doing it for more than 10 years, I'd say, is like, when you're first starting up, learning, you think that is going to be the thing that is the be all and end all. What gear you use, what mics you use, whether it's set up, like every little thing matters, but the actual performance and the music is the thing that we're trying to capture. And as long as you can capture that in a way that doesn't suck objectively, because
people come into the studio and they'll say, they'll look at the control room and be like, oh, this is where the magic happens. I'm like, no. I mean, I can do things that because you don't know what they are will seem like magic, but actually the magic happens in the tracking room. Now we can there's loads of stuff you can do in the control room. Don't get me wrong. I love technology and I love a lot of things about. My wife laughs at a while ago I had to give a lecture on microphones. Yeah. And she woke up with me sleep talking about microphones. I can totally do that. But the magic happens in, the thing that we actually connect with. Yeah. Like when we're listening to music, we're not going, oh man, did they use a 47? Like a 70s 47? Or is that a reissue? I'm not certain. Like nobody is thinking that kind of stuff. Yeah. They want to hear, they want to hear the guitar solo. They want to hear the turn of phrase in the vocals. They want to hear the thump of the kick drum. We might think about the technical side of those things, but the magic is the thing that makes you move, that makes you get the hairs up on your neck. Totally.
Well, tell us a bit more about going from learning about instruments and moving into engineering and production. How did that sort of happen?
I'm not really certain. Like I've thought about this, because I listen to podcasts, obviously, and people will say, oh, like I had this 4-track and I had a 4-track moment, but I'm not really certain. At some point, I just liked the idea of recording. We had a hi-fi at home, really nice hi-fi. This is another thing that I find kind of strange about people who are into music who don't have a good listening setup. Whether that's really nice pair of headphones and a headphone amplifier, or whether it's a really nice turntable and some big speakers. Sure. I don't understand why you would not have a good environment to listen to music if you're a music lover. So we always did when I was growing up. My dad always had a nice hi-fi, and so I would, and we had access to it. Like it wasn't like it was like, no, don't touch that. That's dad's. So we had a big old reel-to-reel, beautiful Akai 1970s reel-to-reel. We had
Unreal.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, everyone.
That's right. We're dads, right? Yeah, it's cool. But we had turntable. We had a interesting vinyl selection. Again, like, so little of it was contemporary to me. We had a huge tape collection, and then of course when CDs came, we went and bought a CD player and started buying CDs.
Quick question on that: when you're hearing, mostly classical music and older music, what happens to you when you hear something at that age? When you hear something that's new and radio friendly or like contemporary, what do you think at that point?
I don't know about, well, what I think, I guess, like from my perspective, and maybe I didn't think that at the time, but I definitely think it now, is good music is good music. The things that make a great musical experience, they translate across all genres. So if you like something that's, rhythmically engaging, you can listen to some Baroque and go, my gosh, this is fantastic.
Absolutely.
And if you wanted to, and I mean, plenty of people have done this, like you want to put drum and bass to Baroque music. It's a piece of cake,
Yeah.
I saw this hilarious reel just the other day, which was The Rite of Spring, and a guy playing 4/4 beats over the top of it on a drum kit.
Yeah.
And which is, completely not what should be done. Or, I saw another one with, guys playing 4/4 beat over take 5. And you go, hang on. And all it ends up is this interesting kind of rhythmic displacement.
Yes.
So the concept of a musical phrase, the concept of a musical moment, I think they are sure there's specifics and specific complexity that happens within a genre or a style. But if Mozart was alive today, he would be making music, and he'd be making music that we connected with, and every now and then, you have these wild genre crossovers. Like, I mean, I don't know whether you remember, but do you remember the band Deep Forest or the album Deep Forest?
No.
Back in the 90s, there's like this, they had like Gregorian chant with, pop music. And then there was one where they had this fascinating pygmy melody over, like dance beats.
Yeah, right.
And people were like, oh, kind of cool. Like, I mean, it's so naff now. Like, if you heard it now, you'd be like, oh, what?
Yeah. But I think
that was in the top 40. Are you kidding me?
The ability to channel it is like the point, right? Like, it's like it's being able to recognize there's something here and just going with it. And I think that's a really hard thing to do for people that are, maybe in their head or like believe what other people say or things like that. They probably stop themselves a lot from following through on channeling things like that.
Yeah, and I think, I don't want to be disparaging of other people. Like, their experience is their experience. If, like my dad, he loves this, he loves early music, and like he will search out new performances of pieces that he's heard plenty of times, and he goes deep in that, and he loves it. Great. If he doesn't want to listen to a drum and bass mashup with Bach fugue, fine.
Yeah, totally.
And if he did hear it and go, oh man, that's a bit lame.
Yeah.
Also fine.
Yeah.
I'm probably not buying that record either.
Yeah.
But if I was at a gig and somebody wanted to do that, I'd be like, cool, let's see it happen.
Totally.
It's skill, passion. I'm probably gonna have a great time.
Yeah.
And I'm probably not buying that record.
Yeah.
The records that I buy, the records that I listen to, that I choose to listen to for my own edification, I don't know. They're nowhere near as broad as my musical experience and my musical taste.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing, isn't it? Tell us more about your early days producing and engineering. What did that look like?
Well, so I reckon the first record I did, I was still at university. The first one I produced and engineered. I was still at university. I was really into the concept of recording by that point. And I did record a lot of concerts, a variety of different kinds of classical music concerts. and I quite enjoyed that. And I mean, it was the early days of hard disk recording.
Mm-hmm.
So I was using a program called Digital Performer, which was, pretty similar to Cubase or Pro Tools in sort of, capability, etc. But it was very limited. The software itself wasn't very limited, but the multi-tracking capacity was quite limited and very expensive. So like just getting a device that had 8 channels in and 8 channels out was very expensive. I think my first one was a Motu 2408, and it wasn't really portable. Like, you had a Mac Pro with a PCI card in it, and then the rack unit, and so you had to take your Mac Pro and a monitor and a keyboard and a mouse, all this kind of stuff. So, but then getting to go into a studio, there weren't many studios. So I grew up in Launceston.
Okay.
There weren't many studios in Launceston. I don't even know if there are now. But
still haven't had anyone from Tassie on the podcast. Well, now.
I mean, I was not born in Tassie, but I grew up there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then we went with some friends to a TAFE that had a studio, and it was I think the first and last time I used ADATs. Was happy to miss that kind of period of technology.
Yep.
ADATs and DA88s were like cool, except they really weren't. I was right into it.
Yep. Do you remember what you were looking for, what you were focusing on at that time, and how has that changed to now?
I mean, that's a good question, because there's a lot of things that I'd say haven't changed for me, in that I like making records. I really do. I actually don't think that there's a stage of the process that I don't like. There's stuff around the periphery, like doing backups and,
the necessities.
instrumental prints and whatever. Like, if that's the drawback, then fine.
True.
But the idea of like capturing a great performance of a great song or a great piece of music, a great musical moment, finding ways to frame it that make sense, that are inspiring, working with people who are, sharing something deep. And I mean, that doesn't have to mean that, they're sharing some, heartbreak or something. Like, sharing something deep can be, something that really makes you want to groove.
Yeah.
Or something that makes you really happy, or something that makes you laugh, as well as something that is, indefinable. Musical moments can be all kinds of different things.
Yeah.
And I loved that back then, and I love it now.
Yep.
I think things that I was focused on back then, I think they were, just the same ideas I have now, but in their infancy, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And do you look for, or I guess, what do the conversations look like when it comes to coaching an artist through recording sessions? And because you're working across, various genres, avant-garde, rock, how does that look the same, and how does it look different from artist to artist?
So
few questions there, I realize.
Yeah. But I mean, some of it, every single project is different. Even a new project with the same artist that I've worked with before. So they're all different. There are elements from, project to project that are going to have some similarities. And there's a variety of characters and you and situations that you kind of go, okay, I can see how this is going. I'm going to bring this technique in.
Yeah.
But even that, like, you can feel like, I know how this is going. I can see that this artist has this kind of character and I'm going to provide this kind of environment. You do that, and then it doesn't go the way you think it is. And that can be a good or a bad thing. in the moment, as long as you take it and go, all right, I can see that the idea that I had, it's not working.
Mm-hmm.
What do I do to adjust that? Does that simply mean, you know what, we need to take a break? Or is it like, actually, we need to change our approach? Sometimes that's about the artist. Sometimes it's about the piece of music. And then, of course, sometimes it's about the circumstance. Like if I'm working on a orchestral record, I cannot go and talk to the third, I can't go and talk to the third flautist. I have to talk to the conductor, and that is the conversation that we have.
Sure.
Same thing in a variety of band situations. Who is the leader of the band? What's that relationship? Is there a leader, or is it more of a democracy? And how does that work? At which stage of the process are we? Like if we've done a lot of stuff, a lot of work, we're closing in on the final mixes, and somebody goes, I really don't think that drum beat is the one we need. What do you do? Do you try to convince them otherwise? Do you discuss it with the group? Do you go, okay, well, do we just change it?
It's hard to say, isn't it? My initial thought is whatever gets you there the quickest, but that's not necessarily the right thing to do either.
No, it isn't. It isn't. Like it does depend on the project.
Yeah.
Right. I've made jazz records in a day. Track it one day, mix it the next day. Now, that's the goals, and sometimes the important thing is what gets you there the quickest, because you need to keep the flow going.
Yeah.
We're not going to sit here and tweak the kick drum sound for 2 hours while the band stands around and looks at you. Like that is not going to fly.
Yeah.
It's not going to fly for anybody. But then, if you're working on another record and you didn't spend 2 hours working on getting that drum beat just right, and 3 weeks later, you're still working on this project, and what you should have done was taken more time with it earlier. You got to know the project, you got to know the people, you got to know like a lot of things. But I don't know. I mean, this is all part of what I love about making records.
Yeah,
is that they're all different, or the people involved in them are different. And even though I make somewhere between 30 and 40 records a year every year, I'm still seeing combinations and situations that
you can't predict, eh?
No. And even when you think you have it.
It's so true.
Yeah. And I mean, that's great.
Yeah,
that's,
it is. Keeps it interesting. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if I
it'd be boring if everything was the same every single day.
Oh man. Yeah. Like the one thing I think I love most about my career is the variety. I like making country records. I like making folk records. I like making jazz records. If I made jazz records all year long, I would go spare.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I want to, direct the conversation towards rolling stock. Tell us a little bit about how that, what was the inception of that, and let's start there.
Okay, so sometimes ideas, they germinate for a really long time, and I had the idea. Maybe I can go back a little bit further. I used to work at VCA. So when I came to Melbourne, I studied at VCA. And then after a little while, I took over the recording studio there. And the goal was to run it as a professional studio inside an educational institution, so that we would provide educational services that were needed by the school. And then we would provide professional services outside of it to raise money for the school.
Sure.
And to provide professional experiences for the students. So, I would make a record and we go, hey, it'd be really nice if we had an oboe on this. And I'd walk down the corridor and I'd listen for somebody practicing oboe. And then I'd get them to play on the thing.
Love it.
It was great. So there was this real community sort of hub there. But it was one studio and one person, which was me.
Yeah.
So that part of it wasn't great in the sense that I didn't have colleagues essentially. And I really, I missed maybe I didn't actually realize I missed that at the time, but it was something that was missing. And then, I left there and I went on freelance, and I'd work at this studio and that studio. And there were things that I liked about all of them and things I didn't like about all of them. And one of them I did a bit of work at over the years was Atlantis, down in Port Melbourne.
Mm-hmm.
And it had 2 studios. And often when I would work there, Dave McClooney, who was the studio owner and manager, great engineer, really, really lovely guy, he would occasionally sit in and see what we were doing, or he'd be in the other room working on something, and guys would go off for a coffee, and I'd pop in and see what he was doing. And I learned a lot from being around. And, sometimes all it would take would be, you'd be tracking something, you couldn't get something right. And I'd say, Dave, what's up with that snare? He goes, maybe you should try. And it wouldn't necessarily be the answer, but it was the freedom to go, I don't have to do it that way. I can do something else.
Absolutely.
And so I liked the idea of having a hub, a community, a group of people. And also, financially, studios are really difficult. The economic imperatives running up against real estate is really hard.
And the music industry landscape
itself. And I mean that's it's always been hard, but anyway, you use the live room the least, so why not build a studio in which you share a live room, and so that's what we ended up making. I tried it out a few different times. I tried to pitch that idea to a few studios around, and I never got it off the ground. And so when Svi said, hey, I've got this building, it's got a trailing lease, maybe we could do something with this. He and I had already been talking about stuff. And I was like, cool. And that was it. So we built 3 separate control rooms around a main live space. It's isolated enough. Like this last weekend, I had a free jazz group in the main room with me in the control room. And on the other side of the wall was Tom Strode doing, actually I'm not really certain what you'd call them, maybe punk folk.
Yep. Cool.
And they were, doing various little bits of overdubs and stuff. Isolation was enough.
Great.
We could all do what we needed to do.
Fantastic.
When I go in there today, I think they're doing overdubs in the main room and I'll be mixing in my control room. But yeah, it works great. And over the years, we're 10 years May this year. We got the lease.
Congrats.
Thank you. I have no idea how many hundreds of projects we've done.
Yeah.
Apart from COVID, I don't think there's been a year that I've done less than 30.
Yep.
And when I say contributed significantly to 30 records.
Yep.
So that might mean mastering it, or it might mean mixing it. Sure. It might mean doing everything. But there's probably 8 of us that work out of there regularly. So now Enzai, he works out of my room, mixes, tracks, produces a variety of stuff out of my room because I don't work 7 days a week.
Yep.
And then Tom has John O'Trawn, or Good Mood Melbourne. He works out of his room. Andy Robinson, Svi Belling, of course, in his room. So I reckon, you count it up. There's about 8 there regularly, and then there's every now and then there'll be a dry hire from somebody. So yeah, it's an absolute ton of stuff going on. But the crazy thing about that is though, right? So Rolling Stock is there in Collingwood. Yep. And there's so we're on Keele Street. There's a studio up the road. I think that has 5 production rooms in it. Yep. Up the road from us. There's Red Door, which is on it's next street over. Can't remember what it's called. There's Andre Ehrman's place, which is the one in the
Carriage.
The Carriage. And then a little bit further, not that further afield. There's one on the other side of Wellington Street.
Purple Wayne as well.
Purple Wayne. And now, what are we up to? That's
12,
15 production rooms.
Oh, yeah.
And then you've got the Avery, which is a little bit further afield, but there. And I just connected with some people on Instagram that have just built a film post.
Oh, yep.
So, Foley and whatever. Yep. Around the corner. I haven't been to it yet. But that's all within a kilometre.
And there's more as well. I mean,
but that's in that tiny little circle.
Exactly, it's crazy, isn't it?
And so much material is being made. We are pumping it out. And I was watching the show Shrinking. US TV show.
Yep.
Great show. Really enjoying it. Funny. Harrison Ford's on it. Whatever. And then there's Angie McMahon.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey, I recognize that voice. I texted Alex and go, hey, are you guys on this TV show? And he's like, yeah. Like, how crazy is that? Yeah. Like, just up the road you made that and now it's on the,
awesome.
It is.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
It is. Yeah. I love it. And I think like since starting this podcast 2.5 years ago, just like you should see my spreadsheet of names of just people. Like it's just there's heaps, and I don't know if I'll ever get through it because I'll keep adding more. It's crazy the amount of just really talented like producers and engineers and songwriters and stuff that come out of not only Melbourne but Australia. Like it's crazy. Like I'm in Melbourne, so that's why I said that. Not discounting any other states at all.
No, but we're like Australia. I mean Melbourne, sure. That's my community. So I agree. Like I can look around and go, hey, there's a lot of us. Yeah. But actually Australia wide, it's huge.
Yeah.
And we are really like punching way above our weight.
Yeah.
And it's a real, I mean, we could get deep into this one, but it's a real disappointment that our broader community and our governments at every level have failed to capitalize and support us on that.
Yeah.
I just it blows my mind how easy it is to ignore something that we contribute to the economy enormously. We contribute to the cultural activity in our country enormously.
I think that when I was at TAFE, one of my teachers, Dobe Newton, who's
I know Dobe.
Yeah. I'm sure a lot of people know Dobe. He's funny as, but he made a point of, I think, on one weekend in Melbourne, this was 2010 or 2011, so this is a long time ago, but I'm sure it still holds true. On one weekend in Melbourne, the amount of money spent at live music is more than all of the AFL games in an entire year.
Yeah, right.
That's what he said. I don't know whether it's true, but it sounds they did do sort of realistic.
You'd have to look at But I mean, this is the kind of stuff that we expect our governments to do, is to look at the reality on the ground and say, well, what is actually happening? And there was a study that came out when the Slam Rally was happening, which is around, what is that, like 2011, 2012?
Yeah.
Around about that time.
Yes.
Which had more people going to see music in Melbourne than went to see the AFL.
Yeah.
Now, somebody would say, oh, well, what about the TV audience or whatever?
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, fine. Like, actually do the study, but find out, right? Because Tasmania is about to spend nearly $1 billion building a stadium for the AFL.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's a lot to go in there and a lot to unpack and whatever. And I'm not really interested in that. But can you remember the last time we built a $1 billion venue for music?
Yeah.
And they might say, oh, well, we'll use the stadium for music as well. I'm like, that's not why you're building it.
Yeah.
And we also have problems with that. Like, so we collectively built the Melbourne Recital Centre. That was that's a great venue. It's really expensive for local musicians to use. Why? It's, the salon. I've made beautiful recordings in there. Really lovely space. Great place to make an acoustic record of some form. And there's so much great music being made that would suit that room in Melbourne. I can't hire it as a recording studio. Yeah. Why not? Yeah. It's all the functionality is ready to go. And then if you do approach them to it, it's a long negotiated process. And then when you finally get the figure, you're like, are you kidding me? Like how? What are we doing?
It's unrealistic. Well, you can't expect it.
And then you go, all right, well, why? Like, plenty of Mondays in their calendar would have no bookings, right? who's going to do something Monday during the day, right? So why don't we come up with a system in which, you make an application, you get on the list, and you get access. I mean, that's just one way that we could be supporting. And nobody seems to be pushing forward ideas like this. Yeah. Like I went to the Music Victoria Awards, and maybe I shouldn't talk out of turn about this, but a couple of years ago, or more than a couple of years, I'd already built rolling stock. So maybe 9 years ago, I went to the Music Vic Awards, and I've won, or rather I say projects of mine have won many times. Album of the year, jazz album of the year, whatever. Doesn't matter. Like, I'm active in Melbourne. I'm going to get up for awards from time to time. But it took me ages to get a meeting with people there to talk about this. And I wanted to talk about why, like, we're members. Many of the engineers are members, producers are members. Why is there no, engineer of the year? Why is there no studio of the year? Yeah. And, not because I want to win the award, but because I want recognition for our scene, And they're like, oh, it says, live music awards. I'm like, it's not gig of the year. Albums don't spring from nowhere. We're also talking about your constituents. Yeah. Me, I'm a member. Yeah. You're a member. Yeah. Like all of these members, you don't represent us. Yeah. And then they did. The next year they didn't add the award. The next year they put on the credits, so they would go album of the year, engineered by or produced by. And I was like, well, at least it's something. To start, yeah. And then later on, they did finally do producer of the year, and I was like, oh, great! I'm going to nominate myself. I'm going to nominate a bunch of other people, and then you go like, what's the nominated criteria? It's like, do this, and then it's like, and name 3 tracks that you made. 3 tracks. I made 30 records. Like, the ability to make 1, 2, or 3. Like, this is. Yeah. Did any of you ask us? Yeah. Like our community? And anyway, like I say, I often look at the governing bodies, government and our own governing bodies, and go, I don't think this is fit for purpose. I don't think it's fit for purpose, or that you're out there like creating or celebrating or driving investment and support for our community. And it is really hard. Like I was saying, like the economic reality meeting the real estate reality is deeply problematic. Yeah. And we've watched plenty of our studios disappear because they can't make those bits work.
All the time.
Sing Sing is now twice gone because they couldn't make the economic realities work. And, no shade on them. Like, they did great work for a very long time. But when, when a developer comes in and goes, well, I can sell this building for $25 million. Why would I rent it to a studio for, I mean. Yeah. Challenging stuff.
Yeah, it's deep. It is deep. Let's sidestep into a little bit less deep, but still deep. Some of the, we've talked about the economic challenges, the problems of running a business related around audio. Let's talk about as a producer, as an engineer. Let's unpack some of the difficulties and challenges, but also how have you overcome those challenges, day to day, week to week, month, year, etc.
Yeah. I think the first thing to recognize there, is at times we think, I've thought at times that this career is exceptional in terms of, and music in general, in terms of the challenges that are faced by being a sole trader freelancer.
Yep.
That's not entirely true. There are plenty of other career paths out there that face many of the same challenges. Long hours, low money. How do you deal with relationships? When you're essentially living away from the 9 to 5 grid. How do you deal with things like superannuation? Other careers have those problems, and it's unhelpful for us to think of ourselves as the only people that face those challenges.
Yes. Yeah.
But that being said, they are major challenges. How do we face them? Like, one, I think you have to face them with a certain level of realism.
Yes.
It is hard work. Like making a career out of it is hard work. And you have to find ways to hustle, I guess, that make sense to you. And if you don't have that mindset in some way, it's going to be really hard.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, it's something you can learn.
Yeah.
But the number one thing that will get you longevity, I think, is you have to be good at what you do, but that's a given, right? You have to be good. But after that, being good is not enough. We all know, musicians who are the, wonderful musician, make a career out of it. And really, that is no shade on them. And we know engineers, producers, we know people, So what are the things that are going to keep you going? One is finding ways to turn off. And one of the ones that helped me was I have a wife, and my wife likes to go on family holidays. And not like 5 a year, but like she's like, I'm not going to sit around over Christmas and New Year while you work.
Yep.
It's like, that's right. We're going to go and do family stuff. I've got kids, school holidays. What do you do? I'm not going to send my kids to after school care for 2 weeks while I continue working. So what are you going to do? You're going to find ways to balance that, and that's really hard. It took me a long time to learn that. And I would say that I routinely have to relearn it, especially when you look far ahead in your diary and you're like, oh, there's nothing in, I don't have anything booked in September. And you get a couple of calls, so you fill it up, and then, you fill it up some more, and you fill it up some more going, what am I going to do? And then, of course, you get closer to it and you realize, hang on, I booked all the weekends. And my wife was like, well, I don't want to be a stay-at-home mum. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And she's right. And I was like, actually, you know what? I'm going to have to move that. I'm going to have to move that. And you don't want to do that because you end up looking like you're not organized. And these are not good things.
No.
So you really have to be proactive about it. The sooner you can, put that into your life, the better it is.
Yeah.
And it's really hard when you're young because, you want to do all the things and you just got to learn you can't.
Yes. I think, it's a really important thing to systematize as much as you can on that side of things. Obviously, when you're doing work, systematize that stuff as well, because that just make you a faster engineer, which is a great thing. You don't want to be thinking about the technicalities of what you do while you're trying to talk to people and get the best performance out of them. But that other side of things, the admin, having organized calendars, all that sort of stuff, setting yourself up for the future, being like, I'm going to eliminate the possibility of me making the mistake of booking that weekend by making sure that I'm checking my calendar on a weekly, daily, whatever that looks like.
Put in
blocks. Put
in stuff where you're like, I'm not working that weekend. And it does, and not because, your son has a football game on that weekend, but because you're just not going to work that weekend. And if that means that you're just at home farting about, well, great.
It's important.
It is important. So, do that. Like that one, like for your own mental health, for the mental health of your family around you. And then be strict about it.
Totally.
So I used to tell people why, they say, oh, hey man, can you work this weekend? I'm like, no, I'm going away with the family. I never tell people that anymore. Well, I don't tell, fresh people about that. I just say I'm unavailable. Just the same, so they might think, oh, well, he's booked with some other band or whatever. It's irrelevant.
It is, yeah.
I am unavailable that weekend.
Correct.
And the conversation just moves straight on. You're
Yep.
like, oh, okay, cool. Well, what about this date? You're like, great, I can do that
Yep.
date.
And I think to your point before is like, you know, you get the FOMO. You think like, I'm going to miss out on opportunities. It's like, well, think about the opportunities that you're missing out on when you book it in as well. Like that's more
but
important also.
You will miss out on opportunities.
Yes.
Yeah. And sometimes, as happens, you book in something and, it's 3 months in advance. So you book it in, great, not doing anything. And then, 3 weeks later, you get a call going, oh, hey, we've got this project. And you go, oh, I really want to do that. And then you've got to make a decision. Like, do you find a way out of the first project because it's not as good as the second project? Or do you find a way to try and shoehorn the second project in somewhere else? And your people skills around that are really important. You need to find a good way through it. And sometimes that means I said yes to the other project. That's what I'm doing. And I missed out on that. Okay. But you got to get used to the idea you are going to miss out. You're going to miss out on all kinds of stuff. And you're going to win on other ones. Yeah. So,
there's a level of trust within your own process and believing in that, I think is really important to, first of all, set up the stuff that we've talked about. But when it comes to that point where something grabs your attention and you say, oh, I really need to do it, trust the reason that you put those stops in place in the first place is the reason why you're going to miss out. And it's not for the lack of wanting to do it or anything like that, or, miss out on what could happen or anything like. No, trust the process of me doing that. I've got this in there for a reason. I have to, it'll be what it's going to be, and that's okay. And that's okay.
And once you have that, and once that's solid, then, you can introduce some flexibility to it. And you do, you might call up the first project and say, hey, look, can I move your dates back a couple of days because of this thing? And if it's a really great thing, maybe you tell them about it. You're like, because I really want to do this, I don't know, like Aphex Twin is in town and great. Yeah. And they might be really excited for you. Or they're like, oh man, we've got that guy flying in from Sydney. We've already bought the tickets. You're like,
okay.
All right. And if you're honest about all that kind of stuff, they're going to respect that. And also, part of it is, I want to be that person. I want to be the person that I respect in that situation. Yeah. Just the same as I was saying, like you block out a weekend and you're going to hang at home with the kids. I want to be that guy too.
Yeah. It is like parenting in that way. It's like what you show your children is what they will emulate in more ways than you actually telling them what to do. It's the same thing with clients and stuff like that. Like,
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, parenting, telling kids what to do is not.
It's the easiest way to get them to do the opposite thing.
Yeah, it's definitely not the fast way. Yeah. But, along with that, like, you need a partner that will understand and appreciate that. And you need to make certain that, you reward that, that flexibility and appreciation. You need a certain level of like comfortability in your own situation. You need to, at least for me, I've spent a lot of time finding subsequent ways, secondary ways to supplement my income, all music related. But so it's still something that I'm interested in, something that I'm passionate about, but it's a way for me to make some money.
Yep.
And then finding a certain level of comfort with your own situation. I don't have a new car. I don't have a big TV. I don't, there are loads of things that now some of those I don't need or want, but the projection of our community and a society says that maybe you should want those things. And just being cool with, that's not important to me, or it's not important to me right now. I've made a little. I mean, I have made a lot of sacrifices, but at the same time, like some of them were not actually sacrifices because I didn't want the other thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you really need to work those things out.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then of course there's all the usual stuff. Like I saw this guy give a talk once at SAE. You could it's a little clip that you could find it, and it's great. And he's talking to this group of students, and he gives a bit of a spiel about himself, and then it opens up for questions, and the person says, I want to do what you do. Like, how do I get to being a professional producer? And he's like, oh, okay. Who showed up late? It's all right. There's like 200 of you here. Put your hand up. Who showed up late? Great. None of you have a job tomorrow because you show up late. Like, there's so much competition. Why? How many people are here? And there's 200 something. Right. Great. I don't actually know 200 producers making a living. So a lot of you will fail. And I mean, some of that is just kind of like blustery kind of, know your place kind of crap. But a lot of that stuff is actually also true. Yeah. Like there cannot be 100,000 record producers. Yeah. So, just like there cannot be 100,000, guitarists making a living in Melbourne. That's not the economy, right? Doesn't mean you can't make records. Doesn't mean that you can't love making music and do that and pursue it to the highest level. But there are plenty of people that are, playing football on Wednesday night and having a great time who know that they're never going to play for Collingwood, never going to play for, the Brisbane Lions. Fine. Yeah. And if you ask them, maybe they'd say, oh, I mean, that'd be fun. But actually what I want to do with my life is know that it's something that you want to do. Yeah. And then, make certain that you deliver on the things like, showing up on time in all of the forms of showing up on time, to show up prepared. When you're there, you're there. You're not somewhere else. Does it really matter about whether you have all the fancy microphones? I mean, that's nice, but knowing how to use what you have, picking the environment, making a space for people, doing your invoicing correctly, all of that stuff is as much a part of making a career and making records. Yes, exactly. As picking the 87 over the whatever.
When it comes to it being your career, it being your livelihood, it being your job, that absolutely is true. Yeah. And
it's like at times it can be a really lonely job. But you buy a lot of freedom and a lot of great experiences, etc., with the sacrifices that you make. If you make clever sacrifices, and when it works, I mean, it's great. Like,
there's nothing. Yeah, when it works, there's nothing better.
And you can make it work. Like, I'll go to a party and people, oh, what do you do? Oh, I'm a record producer. Like, oh, great. Have you worked with anybody famous?
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm like,
first thing so many people ask.
And sure. Yeah. I mean, I've worked with some famous people. Yeah. But I mean, most of them, unless you're a music lover, you'll never have heard of. Yeah. And I remember, overhearing somebody at one of these parties, actually only just a few months ago, and I didn't know the person he was talking about. Right. He's like, oh, this guy's the greatest guitarist in the world. I can't believe you don't know this guy. Yeah. I'm like, whatever. And I start talking to somebody else, but I can hear him talking. This guy is talking to the person next to me. Oh, man, that guy can't be any good. I can't believe it. Total lightweight or whatever. I was like, I make records for a living. Yeah. I've been having a great time doing that. Yeah. And I put food on my table by doing this. Yep. I actually don't really care what you think.
It's irrelevant. Completely irrelevant. Yep.
And I think that's I don't know. Like, it took me a while to get to that place as well. Yeah. Like, where you're like chasing the cool project. And like, actually, I've made the vast majority of my income has been making really great projects that maybe not that many people will hear.
Yep. Truer words never spoken, Miles.
Actually, the project that I did, I think this is hilarious, that the most amount of people have ever heard.
Yeah.
I did the voiceovers for the Southern Cross train station.
Okay.
So the next train to
There you
depart
go.
from platform 12.
Nice.
Yeah. It's not my voice, obviously. I produced the recordings of it. Yeah.
Nice.
And, nobody knows that was me.
Yeah.
There's no plaque
Yeah.
credits for, there's no, I made a decent amount of money for that period of time, but like,
that's what,
I didn't get any residuals for
Yeah,
that. Like,
that would be the funny thing to say at the party to the person that asked that question.
Oh, yeah.
The Southern Cross voiceovers?
Yeah,
That's me.
That's me. Yeah.
That's me.
But, it's like, I did that, thought it was fun.
Yep.
Next project.
Yep, that's it. Yep. Well, we'll start to wrap it up. What have you got on the horizon that you're looking forward to, whether that's a specific project or whether that's a thing for the studios? Like what's coming up in the next, 6 months that you're really excited about?
It's a little bit ridiculous. I have to look at my diary to actually to talk about projects.
That gets said all the time.
Yeah.
So don't stress.
But things that I look forward to, like, I'm not kidding when I say I really love making records. So I'm looking forward to making more records.
Yeah, fantastic.
I also really love being at Rolling Stock and having a crew around. So I'll pop my head in and see what other people are doing. I'll come into the studio. Sometimes I don't look at the diary, I'm focused on what I'm doing.
Yes.
And I come into the studio and I'm like, oh, cool. Check out that. And they're doing something in there. I've come in and found a 20-piece choir in my studio.
Cool.
And I'm like, awesome.
Yeah. Sick. Yeah.
I do my best to support a variety of people. So here's something separate. And I hope this doesn't go crazy, but like I get a lot of asks for interns, work experience, etc. From the SAE, the TAFE, the whatever. I think everybody who has a studio gets them. And it's part of, they'll say it's part of their course. I've got to do 12 weeks of internship. And I'm not going to get into why I think that whole thing is deeply problematic. But something, I can't do that, right? I can't host people for that kind of thing. But I'll reach out to people and they'll write to me and I'll reach back and I'll say, cool, come down and have a coffee and we'll talk. And maybe less than half of them actually come down and have a coffee to talk. And then I say, look, we talk about various things, etc. And I'm like, look, I can't, host you here for 12 weeks. But like if you're interested, book a band, book the studio, and I'll sit in, I might do my admin up the back of the room or whatever, and I'll just step in if you need some help, or I'll show you where things are and whatever. Only one person has ever taken me up on that offer.
Totally.
That person has gone on to do very well for themselves.
Yeah.
Good on them.
Yeah.
But it amazes me how little people take that, and so they're like, oh, I want a job. I'm like, there aren't any jobs. You can go get a job at the AV company. There's loads of that. And nothing wrong with that. You can go and work at Hamer Hall. You can go and work at the Recital Centre.
Yeah.
There's work out there. Go and do that. There isn't any jobs in studios, not that I'm aware of. There's lots of work in studios.
Yeah.
But nobody's going to give you a job, And so every now and then I'll have something happen like that. And I always look forward to it. Yeah. When something where you can support somebody and you watch it come together and you go, awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
I really look forward to that.
Yeah.
I'm also, I don't know. There's always things to look forward to. What have we got coming up for the studio? No idea.
Just heaps.
Really,
heaps of good stuff.
Heaps. Like I say, we're there 10 years now. Eventually our lease will be up.
Yep.
So I've started thinking about building again, what that would look like, what I would like to see. You don't happen to have a spare warehouse?
I do not.
damn.
Yeah, apologies.
But I mean, that will probably be my next big challenge.
Awesome.
I don't know how that will happen yet.
Yeah. All good. Well, if anyone's listened to this before, they'll know this is my final question. Best quick fire advice for producer engineers, first of all.
Oh, yeah.
And then for any artists that might be listening.
Okay. Okay. I'll start with the artist one because
sure.
My number one thing, I think, when talking with artists who are looking forward, I guess, like there are plenty of artists who know what they're doing. Great. And my advice generally is keep doing it, you know, and whether that's, chasing management or whether it's they just like making records too, and that's what they're doing. Great. I don't have any big advice in terms of how to, quote unquote, make it or whatever. It's never been a part of my process, I guess.
Yep.
So the thing I would say to artists is just keep doing it, and find a way to keep doing it that makes sense. And if that means, you play music at home with your friends and you never play gigs, okay. If it means that, every now and then you write a song for a friend and play it to them, awesome. Yep. We get caught up in this idea, kind of like I was saying before about the, guy who plays football on Wednesdays. We get caught up in this idea that musicians, you have to like be on a path to make it, whatever that is. And I think that is a massive deception. We've got people going on, Australia's Got Talent or whatever. And I'm fine. You want to do that? Totally. Go and do that. And, there's an audience there. Also, totally fine.
Yeah.
I don't have any, we don't talk to each other about it.
Yeah.
That side of the industry and me, we don't have anything to say to each other. But, we have this idea that you have to be on a path to make it rather than, hey, you could just enjoy it. You can just do it because you love it.
Yeah.
Just like the guy who plays in D-grade football.
Yeah.
He knows he's not going to play for Collingwood. He's, and his friends aren't standing around him going, hey, dude, man, you should give that shit up. You're never going to play with Collingwood. Like, he's like, what, am I dumb?
Yeah.
Like, he's having a good time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what I'd say to, to artists is like, you love doing it, keep doing it. You don't love doing it.
Find another way or another thing. Yeah.
Rediscover your love for it.
I think it's the reframing of absolutely.
And people have this idea, like the greatest piece of music isn't the most famous one, isn't the one that's made the most amount of money or whatever. Like, yeah, sure, we're still listening to, Bach fugues 400 years on, we're still listening to, whatever. But I swear some of the best musical experiences I've ever had, like I had a friend wrote a song for us and played it at our wedding. Nobody else has ever heard that song.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's written other songs. It's a lovely song. It's not his best song.
Yeah.
But in the moment, there was no better music. There was no better music.
Amazing, yeah.
And, if that's your, musical expression out into the world, awesome. So, find the thing that makes you love it.
Yeah.
Do that thing.
Yeah.
Now, to producers and engineers, first thing I would say actually is respect the fuck out of that. So somebody who's making music because they're deeply passionate about it.
Yeah.
That's what we need to love and support and, build a framework to help them, chasing the fancy project, chasing the project with the biggest money or the biggest profile or whatever. That is the wrong reason to be doing it. And when that person comes to you and starts making music, laying it out in your studio, do whatever you can to make that the most meaningful experience for that person.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they have a great time. You'll have a great time.
Yeah.
And anybody listening to it will have a great time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. Awesome, man. Well, thank you again for joining me today. This has been awesome. I've had a really great time. I always love these conversations, but yeah, really cool chat today. So thank you.
Thank you.
Obviously best of luck for all your future endeavors and hopefully find a warehouse.
To all of us.
Find a warehouse. Thanks to everyone for checking this out. If you made it this far, really appreciate your time, and do us a favor and do what you can to spread the word about the podcast. We want everyone to, well, not everyone. We want everyone in. Man, I don't know how to say it now. I stuffed myself up there, but I would really love as many people to hear this that are interested in this stuff, and I want to champion the producer and engineer community of Australia. So thanks for sharing it, and I will see you next time on What's That Sound podcast. Thanks for listening to What's That Sound. Make sure you hit follow or subscribe on your podcast platform to stay up to date with each new episode. We'll catch you next time.